It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone. Glad you're watching the Forum here today on Eagle Television. Good to have you along with us. Forum brought to you by HaysMed. Today, we're going to talk about forests. You don't think about forest in Kansas, but Jami Seirer is our guest, and she is a district forester with the Kansas Forest Service. And Jami, good to have you here.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things I was looking at the schedule on the program and that you were coming up here, and the first thought came to mind is, you know, I don't think there's a lot of forest in Kansas. And so what does the Forestry Service do in the state of Kansas? What do they do overall? And then we'll talk about how you got involved with it.
Well, Kansas is the fifth oldest, or Kansas has the fifth oldest state forestry agency in the United States. And technically we're 10% forested, all of our land. 10% of it has forested land on it. So there is forest in Kansas. Mm-hmm. You just think in western Kansas, like west of Salina, you don't really think about it too much, but we do have a lot of forests. And so the Forest Service is around. We take care of fire needs. We have a conservation tree and shrub program where we sell little seedlings at bulk rates so you can replace your windbreaks or increase your forest stands or improve them. We do insect and disease diagnosis, community forestry, rural forestry, logging, all kinds of water quality stuff. So it's a big deal.
Well, it is cool. You don't think about that. I have a photo I just had enlarged of western Kansas in the late 1800s, and it's really flat and there's really no trees anywhere. Mm-hmm. And the difference when you look out there today, but going through the Dust Bowl, it became important to get trees to, nothing else stop the wind, but help break the wind anyway. Do you work on that sort of thing as well, where you get into everything from windbreaks and other sort of things?
I do in the western part. Other foresters out east, they do more forest stand improvement projects and water quality along riparian areas and in-town work. But I do mostly windbreaks in my job. And so the Great Plains Forestry Project, which came about during the Dust Bowl, that went right through my district. And so now, rather than encouraging people to plant new ones, which we do encourage, but now we're working on renovation of the old ones. Mm-hmm. And so I go out and help people decide what to take out, what to leave, what to replant, and choosing species in their windbreaks, diagnosing what happened to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk about that too, and where there's better trees today than yesterday. But before all of that, it gets way more complicated, like everything. You know, you learn this much and then you say, wow, there's a lot of things to cover here. How did you get interested in this? Because as I understand, you grew up in southwest Kansas. That's kind of about as far from trees as any place. How did you get interested in forestry? Yeah, further than Hays, just a little bit.
Well, I actually started out here at Fort Hays, and I was really into GIS and remote sensing work. Mm-hmm. And so I got my degree in computer science and a minor in remote sensing. And I did a lot of research on ecology and using satellite data to model ecological happenings. And that research took me to this international conference where I was presenting all of my data and ran into some people from the University of Montana, and they were really interested in what I was doing and like downscaling it from this big global operation to regional work that farmers and ranchers could use. And so I went to grad school there, and we were nested in the College of Forestry, so my master's degree is Master's of Science in Forestry. And just happened to be in the right place at the right time, finished up with that, and there was an opening in Hays with the Forest Service, so.
Right back home.
Here I am.
Yeah. Very good. Good to have you here as part of that, because, you know, one of the things we look at, and we go through drought, and we go through wetter seasons like we have right now, but over the course of time, since the, you know, the Depression, the Dust Bowl and all that, have there been better trees, better lines of trees, better types of trees that people should be planting today versus maybe even 10 or 15 years ago?
I don't really know about that. I don't know if species selection has necessarily changed. I know there was one species of trees called os trees. They were a type of poplar tree that were planted, and they were really exciting because they would grow really tall really fast. Mm-hmm. But they also died really fast. Mm-hmm. And so those kind of trees aren't recommended anymore. And there's a couple others that maybe were recommended in past conservation plans, like Russian olive, that we don't recommend anymore because they're invasive. But as it stands right now, the most popular species for windbreaks would be eastern red cedar. And then hardwoods would be anything like oaks and mulberries and elms and honey locusts.
Cottonwoods probably not so much, because they're another tree that grows real fast, but then they die.
Yeah, they're kind of weak-wooded.
And doing that. Okay, you talk about some of the trees that are what's called a red cedar. What do you call the cedars that are just everywhere that everybody wants to cut down and get rid of?
Those are also eastern red cedar.
They are too,
Yes.
but they were nowhere, and some pastures out my family farms up north of Abilene, Kansas, and we ended up going in and just tearing them out because they just grow everywhere.
Yeah, so it is a management thing. Different parts of the state have to deal with it a little differently than I do in my district. So I feel like there's kind of this invisible line, which you can see on the interstate as you're coming towards Hayes, that once you really get past Russell, coming right into Hayes, there's not much west that has invasive cedars. And so in my district, I don't have to fight with that too much. And that's nice, because eastern red cedar, by and large, is the best windbreak tree you can get. It's got the best density, it's got the best hardiness. It'll grow just about anywhere in the drought, in the wet. It doesn't matter, it'll thrive. And that's really what you want for a windbreak around your house.
So what do you see when problems you go out, because your district is from where to where?
Pretty much from Ellsworth over to the Colorado line, and then Great Bend and Ellsworth up to the Nebraska line.
So you have the northwest quarter, really, of Kansas.
Right.
It's just geographically anyway. And so when you do that, what's your biggest challenge you run into? I mean, would it be the people, or
Oh,
do
no.
you run into? No?
No.
No, everybody wants more trees?
For the most part,
You don't
yeah.
have to
If they
argue about
request
that?
my assistance, then they want trees, and that's exciting. No, it's not the people. Mostly just the adverse conditions to grow the trees. You know, we have some of the weirdest soils out here. They're really high in pH, which causes an iron limitation to the trees. And because of that, trees develop this condition called iron chlorosis, and they can't process water as efficiently, and they turn this real lime green color, and the veins of deciduous trees are really bright green, but then kind of yellow in between, and they start to scorch on the ends. And when that happens, the trees can die pretty quickly, or at least die back pretty quickly. And so just dealing with that, trying to mitigate soil conditions or try to help the trees along as they grow, that's the biggest concern I see. Because you can mitigate water with drip irrigation. You can't really mitigate soil conditions on a big windbreak scale.
So do you get tree questions when you go to events? They know you're forestry, so tell me about because we had a maple tree that did just that. The maple tree ended up with, the leaves turn real kind of a light green, and then pretty soon they start falling off. Then you lose one branch and you end up tearing the tree out. And so it's just tough when you do that. And so what do you prescribe on those types of things where trees are seeing that because of the soil?
Well,
You can't just pull up all the soil and start again. I mean,
and you can't cut down all the trees either, because that's no fun.
that doesn't work. Yeah.
So what we try to do is catch people before they plant the trees and encourage the right tree for the right place. And so out here with our adverse soil conditions, we have a list of preferred trees that are tolerant to those high soil pHs, that are drought tolerant, that can come out of hail damage pretty easily, because we get big storms and, flash flood tolerant. So encouraging people to plant off of that list is definitely the first thing we do. And then following that, there are treatments that could be recommended for, like maples or whatever. If they're sentimental trees that you really, really want to keep, you can treat them. And so then just recommending those treatments to people and helping them understand why the tree is acting the way it is. And then hopefully, if they choose to replace it, planting with a tree off of the preferred tree list.
So what do you do? There are 8 districts in Kansas. You're in District 7. What do you do to continually learn? Where do you go for updates? What are your resources for doing that?
Well, we work a lot with the Nebraska Forest Service. A lot of our publications are shared with them. We do have our own people doing our own little research projects within the State Forestry Agency. And then we go to field days. We're part of forestry agencies or associations that get together and do field days. So like one thing I'm part of is the Kansas Arborist Association. And we host a shade tree conference every year, and that's for all the arborists in the state go there, plus anybody really that's interested. And just encouraging them to keep up on their certifications and licenses so that they can practice arboriculture in town and provide people with good quality tree work. That's a big deal. So working with associations like that, and then we do have the chance to travel from time to time and go out of town or out of state and learn what other state agencies are doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to find out, people may be watching, how they find you and how they find out more information maybe about the trees they have. Mm-hmm. Jami Seirer is our guest here. We'll be back with a little bit more after this from HaysMed.
An INSP original series. Why would these three men want to live their lives by a cowboy code?
What we do best is cowboy.
Tradition, dedication. But one reason is bigger than the rest.
Family. That's what life's all about.
It's a show you don't want to miss. The Cowboy Way, Sundays at 10 p.m. Eastern, only on INSP.
Hi, Scarlett here, and Eagle Radio of Hays is sending me back to Branson September 9th through the 12th on a comfy Village Tours bus. See the fall foliage, hit the casino, and catch a roll at Lambert's Cafe. We are scheduled to see these great shows: Samson, The Hay Goods, The Acrobats of Shanghai, Clay Cooper's Music Show, The Branson Bell Cruise and Lunch Show. Singles, couples, join me September 9th through the 12th. All this for only $798. Call me at 301-2211 to reserve your seat now.
Come to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
Fire in the hole!
Welcome back to the second half of our forum here on Eagle Television. If you have any ideas for future shows, be sure and let me know. Send me a note to gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. Our guest, Jami Seirer, and Jami is with the Kansas Forestry Department here in Hays. They're based out of an office here, District Number 7. Jami is a district forester. And Jami, one of the things we mentioned a little bit earlier was the amount of moisture we have. Does that help you in what you do?
What do you mean?
With having more rain, having more, or is it just different from the years where we have no rain and we're dry?
Well, sometimes it helps and sometimes it hurts, because the trees we like to plant out here are drought tolerant and not necessarily wet tolerant. Mm-hmm. And so that's causing some issues, especially for places like Great Bend that have been flooded for quite a while now. Yeah. But establishing new trees, yeah, that's a cool thing. So when you have a lot of good soil moisture, there's not as much stress and you don't have to rely on drip so much. And then, it hasn't been as hot until just last week.
Yeah,
and that's been really nice too. So,
it might be a good year to plant trees if you're wanting to do that because of the
Right.
moisture content that's in the ground for
Right.
being able to do that. So how do people find out about trees? What do they do? I know there's some neat arboretums around that you can go and walk through and see different trees, learn about trees. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend for people that want to learn about the best trees to plant and what to do in their yard, et cetera?
So if you're in the Hays area, you can go out to Vineyard Park, and the City of Hays has set up a really cool demonstration planting. I wouldn't call it an arboretum quite yet, but they have all these different ornamental species that they've planted, and they're labeled with what they are, and those are all on the preferred tree list also. So if you want to see what they look like, what their growth habit will be, you can go out to Vineyard Park and look at that. Frontier Park is also a good place to be looking for that sort of thing.
Were there signs on the trees where you can see then what the trees are? And
most of them are labeled, yeah, and you can get on the city website and there's a map that has the different trees that they want to point out to you on that map.
What about finding you? How do they find you? What's the best way? Yeah, I know they can. So
they
how
can,
do they do
yes.
that?
So you can go through the extension agency down on Main Street. You can request my assistance that way. I work a lot with NRCS and FSA, so if you're out in the country or outside of city limits, you can request my assistance that way. And you can get on our website, which is www.kansasforest.org. If you do that, it has all the information about me and all my colleagues and all the stuff you need to know about trees too. So you can order conservation trees and shrubs there. You can learn about what species are best for your soil. We have soil maps, all kinds of good information on the website.
And if you ask your name right, Jami Seirer
Seirer.
versus Shearer, like I said earlier, I apologize for doing that. Jami Seirer, they'll get you that. Is there on the website, can they link through and send you a message, or is it better just to pick up the phone and say, hey, Jami, I have a question?
You can send an email through the website, but you can also call.
Do that. All right. Well,
You're
thanks for being here on the show today and doing that. You know, one of the things about this program is we get to learn new things, people that are doing cool things. If you're having problems with a tree, if you're looking at ways to expand, if you know somebody out on the farm that needs to repair their old, and I'll say broken down, windbreak,
Right.
because, you know, out on our family farm, you see that trees get old, they start breaking over pretty soon. You just have a mess on your hand, and you're pretty good. What do you tell those people? Do you start clearing out the old dead stuff and start again?
It really depends. So my district is so wide, it really varies from like standard 2-row eastern red cedar windbreaks that are breaking down all the way over to the eastern side of the district where it's like 8 to 12 rows wide. And so those 8 to 12 row windbreaks are like miniature forests, and you have to treat them that way. And so dealing with those windbreaks is quite a bit different than in the west. And so really it just kind of depends. It's best to have a site visit to kind of evaluate what's going on, whether you need to do anything or not, or maybe sometimes leaving everything you have in place and just planting a supplemental row to get it started would be the best. But we do work with NRCS to offer cost share for that kind of work. And so if there's a financial barrier to getting forestry work done, we can kind of help alleviate that. And so all you have to do is get in touch with me or your local NRCS office or extension, and all of them will come back to me.
Give us your website. You're the specialist, I can tell that. What's the website again?
It's www.kansasforests.org, like plural forest.
All right.
kansasforests.org.
Very good. Jami Seirer has been our guest here. She is a district forester for the Kansas Forest Commission. And if you have any questions, be sure and look her up online, get the information, and go out and plant a tree. Thanks for watching the forest. Thanks for watching the forum. See,
And
you
the Forest
already get it
Service.
right, and the Forest Service, right here on Eagle Television, brought to you by Hayes Med and by Eagle Communications. Our community connected.